Did you love your wife?
Very much.
Did you ever create any sort of a plan with Juliana?
No, there was no plan. That is absolutely crazy.
Do you think this defendant's pants are on fire? I do. Let's go back in the courtroom now. Brendan Banfield talking about the day of the homicides.
Now, and likewise, would she have access to what was Juliana's room and Valerie's room and all the other rooms?
She didn't normally have access to Juliana's room because Juliana kept her door closed all the time. She did have access to Valerie's room, but she didn't tend to go into Valerie's room unless someone else was also in Valerie's room.
Okay. Now, so you're in the basement, and what happened next?
As I was opening the basement door, I kind of, I guess, shooed Lily inside. She was kind of in the way of me going inside. But I saw that Juliana and Valerie were coming down the brick path, maybe 20, 30 feet away, after I had opened the door. And Juliana was carrying Valerie and had followed me.
And after your last discussion with Juliana, had you communicated with her in any way to come down to the house?
I never told her to come down to the house.
Okay. So your previous statement of stay in the car was still standing, I guess?
I believed that it was. After I told her, that was how I ended my conversation with her, was for her to stay in the car.
Okay. So when they got to the basement, what, if anything, did you do?
I allowed them access to the basement. I had the door, I guess, partially open for them. And then as they came in, I closed the door behind them.
Okay. And did you indicate to Juliana and Valerie anything relating to where they should stay?
We had a conversation in the basement. Again, I had searched the basement a little bit. There's mainly one large room in the basement. There's also a bedroom, but in the large room where the couches are and the TV is, and there was workout equipment in there at that point. I looked around that room for a little bit and didn't see anybody. Very short time. But
why were you looking around the basement?
Well, I thought that there was somebody in the house, but I didn't know where that person was.
Okay. And so in terms of your search of the basement, did you do it like a law enforcement officer?
I would say that it was a quick search. The lights were off in the basement when I arrived, and I didn't hear any people or movement in the basement other than ourselves and the dog. So okay. I wouldn't say, I didn't go into like the bedroom closet in the basement or check behind the shower curtain. I didn't do things like that in terms of a search. So, but I did, I guess, walk the main room. There wasn't anyone by the couches. There wasn't anyone by my desk, things like that.
Okay, and were those all in the open area?
Yes.
And did you look into any of the other areas? I mean, other than
I did open the bedroom door that's in the basement, and I also didn't observe anyone there.
Okay, so whatever concern that caused you to do that you didn't have that any further, correct?
I did not have further concern that there was someone else in the basement that shouldn't be there.
Okay, so what, if anything, did you do next? And frankly, what instructions did you have for Juliana and Valerie?
So I instructed Juliana, well, actually, Valerie looked nervous. She was kind of wide-eyed looking at me, and I knelt down to her, and I told her to stay there with Juliana, and she said, "Okay, Daddy."
And so at that point, when you were in the basement, was there anything that caused your concern level to change from when you previously testified that you were outside?
It bothered me that the dog was in the basement, as she's not normally there. But I guess I was glad that she was in the basement at that point with Juliana and Valerie. Valerie loves Lily a lot and spends quite a lot of time with her. But it was also weird that, going back to Lily, it was also weird that Lily's food bowl was in the basement. And it was spilled all over the floor. I think that also shows that Lily was in a bit of a frantic state.
And so where would Lily normally eat her food?
Her dog bowl is always in the living room. Her dog bowl is always in the dining room, where there's placemats for the dog on the floor, and that's where her water and food bowl are.
So the basement level is the lower level, correct?
Yes.
Where would that level that you're saying where Lily normally eats be?
That would be on the main level of the house, where the living room, kitchen, dining room is.
Okay, and as you walk up the stairs from the basement, can you give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury some indication as to what direction you would go to find that?
So if you go up the basement stairs, there's a door that would need to be opened. Facing away from the basement stairs to the left would be the stairs to go up. Kind of directly in front of you would be a half bathroom. Slightly to the right would be a very, very short hallway, only a couple feet. To the right would lead to the living room. To the left, so walking down that very, very short hallway, to the right would be the living room. To the left would be the kitchen, and through the doorway of the kitchen would be, the dining room where Lily's food bowl would be.
At some point, did you leave the basement?
Yes, after I spoke to Juliana and Valerie, I stepped over the dog gate and climbed the stairs.
Okay, so the dog gate was still in place?
Yes.
Did Lily attempt to follow?
No.
Okay, so
She can't jump over the gate.
So explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to go up to the next level, was it one flight of stairs, 2 flights of stairs?
I would call it one flight of stairs, but it's, 7, 8, 9 stairs, and then a small landing, and then 7 or 8 stairs again to the door.
Okay, and the door would be the door to the basement?
Yes.
Okay, so did you go up that basement stairs?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, were you intending on doing when you went up there?
Finding out what was going on in my house.
Okay. When you got to that level, who was there?
When I went up the stairs, I closed the basement door behind me. I did not immediately see anybody on the main floor of my house. And I walked down that very short hallway past the half bathroom so that I could see into the living room and the kitchen area, of which I did not see anybody.
Okay, and was that a full search or just in the moment?
I guess I walked past the kitchen table, and I walked past the countertop, and also looked in the dining room. So I would say that I looked on the main floor of the house.
So you didn't see anyone on the main floor of the house?
No.
Did you hear anyone?
While I was looking on the main floor of the house, I heard sounds from upstairs.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you do at that point?
I moved closer to the upstairs. I moved closer to the upstairs stairs, to the stairs heading upstairs, but still on the main floor of the house.
Okay. And was that a better position to hear or know what's going on?
That's where the sound seemed to be coming from. There's regular ceiling over the kitchen and living room area, but in the foyer area that leads to upstairs, which is where I heard the sounds coming from.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you hear?
I heard the sounds of, I would say, moaning, as well as sound of skin-on-skin contact.
And what did you think was going on at that point?
Sex.
Okay. Was,
I'm just kind of speechless, as you can see. Let us know your thoughts. We're going to hit a break. We'll be right back after this.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Back to court we go. Brendan Banfield on the stand saying that he heard the sound of skin-to-skin contact. His words, saying that he thought his wife might have just been having one of her affairs. Let's go back in.
why didn't you call 911 at that point?
Well, I believe that it was an affair that was going on at that point. That doesn't seem like an emergency for the police to be involved in, was my thought at that moment.
Okay. Now, what were you thinking at that point when you decided what that was?
I guess I was emotional at that point. While Christine and I had affairs, we had never seen each other with anyone. No one was ever caught in the act or anything like that. Hearing what I thought was sex was upsetting.
So what were you thinking to do? What was your thought process at that point?
I thought about just getting the lunches and giving them to Valerie and Juliana and having them leave. I thought about just ignoring the situation and going to work and dealing with this after work, hopefully when no one else is there. I thought about how Christine had just taken off the day before because she was originally supposed to be working on the 24th. And I thought about, well, this seems to be why. I thought about, well, maybe this is why she took off on the 24th.
Okay.
Because I didn't know that she took off on the 24th until the night of the 23rd.
So what made you stop from your initial thought of leaving and getting the lunches and letting Juliana and Valerie go to the zoo?
I guess as my mind was kind of racing in this moment, this sound, I guess, sounded like it changed to me. Instead of what I thought was the sounds of sex, I thought that the impact sounds sounded forceful, and that Christine's moaning sounded painful and not pleasurable, and that the distance between the sound of the skin-on-skin contact sounded too far apart for sex, and I thought that maybe she was being hurt.
So what did you do?
I started to go up the stairs.
Okay. Did you draw your weapon at any point?
While I was walking up the stairs, I did unholster my weapon, and I angled my body going up the stairs so that I was facing the bedroom door, which once you go up several of the stairs, I can see, because I'm taller, but I could see the bedroom door was partially open, maybe 8 to 12 inches, something like that, but I couldn't really see in the door.
But were you able to determine whether that was the area where these sounds were coming from?
That is, I could tell that was the direction of the sound was coming from the master bedroom area. That's the only door towards the left once you go upstairs.
Okay. When you, from the main landing by the front door, to get to the top level, describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the level that you're talking about where the sounds were coming from.
So once again, you would go up several stairs, and then there would be a small landing, and then you would go up one step to another small landing, in which then you would kind of U-turn or switch back and go up another 8 or 9 stairs to the top floor. I don't know exactly how many stairs, maybe 16 or 18 total, but like 8 at the bottom.
Let me bring in Matt Mangino for some reaction. Matt, your thoughts?
Well, at this point, I'm not buying it, Julie. I mean, here's a guy who said he's at the bottom of the steps thinking about his wife having some sort of consensual interaction. And then all of a sudden that changes and he draws his gun and runs up the steps. I mean, this is going to be a tough row to hoe for the defense. I
agree, Matt. I agree. I think that his pants are on fire, and I think that he has overthought his testimony from the time that he was arrested. I think that he has thought about it, and what we're seeing, this awkward, unbelievable testimony, is the result. Matt Mangino, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you kindly. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we're going to hear him talk about the interaction between Joseph Ryan and his wife, Christine Banfield. Don't go anywhere. This is Court TV Live. The defendant is on the stand in the Au Pair Affair murder trial.
This is Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson, in today for Ted Rowlands. Thanks for being with us. We begin this hour in Virginia, where defendant Brendan Banfield is back on the stand in his double murder trial. The former IRS criminal investigator is accused of being the mastermind in an elaborate plan to lure an unsuspecting man to have violent sex with his wife, then frame him for her murder. The family au pair, then 21-year-old Juliana Magalese, took the stand earlier in the trial to describe her affair with Banfield and the subsequent murder plot. But the defense says prosecutors pressured her to change her story. Let's get you back into court now, where Banfield is describing the moments leading up to that murder.
8 at the bottom, and then the landing, then 8 at the top, and then you're at the upstairs hallway.
Okay. Given what you'd heard, did you go right into the room?
Actually, I heard the door open on the main floor when I was by the landing. When I heard the door open on the main floor, I saw Juliana come up this partially at the basement door.
Okay, and so you were both on the same level at that point?
No, I was on the stairs, heading up the stairs, and I kind of only did a quick glance, seeing that Juliana was there, and then I continued up the stairs.
And did you give her any instructions as to whether to go back to the basement?
I didn't say anything to her.
Okay, so you continued on?
Yes.
But you realized she was there?
I did.
What, if anything, did you do next?
I continued up the stairs and made a left towards the master bedroom.
Okay, and in terms of the landing where the master bedroom is located, describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what way you had to go from the top of the stairs.
I went to the left, as that's the way towards the master bedroom. There's double doors to the master bedroom. To the right would be a bathroom, the guest room, Valerie's bedroom, and Juliana's bedroom.
So you went left at this point?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you do at that point outside the room?
Outside the room, I headed towards the door, and I pushed the right of the double doors open with my foot.
And did you otherwise have something in your hands?
Yes, I had my firearm in my hands.
Okay. And when you pushed with your foot, which foot was it?
My right foot.
Okay. And were you able to see or hear any more when you did that?
Pushing the door open with my right foot revealed Christine, and who I now know is Joseph Ryan. They were on the floor near the bottom left of my bed, kind of in front of the master bathroom door, just past the bed, in between the bed and the tall dresser.
Okay. So you just described it as the bottom left. Describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how do you come to bottom left? What position are you in order to describe it that way? If you're in the bed.
Yes, if you were in the bed or facing the TV that's in there, the left would be the bottom left corner. That would be the part that's closest to the master bathroom.
Okay, thank you. And so you indicated you saw Joseph Ryan and Christine.
Yes.
Had you ever seen Joseph Ryan before?
I had never seen Joseph Ryan before.
Had you ever had any communications with him before?
On February 24th is the only time I had communications with him in that room.
Okay, so when you observed this, and please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury exactly what you observed with regard to his contact with Christine.
Christine was, I would describe as nude and on all fours, on her hands and knees. And Joe Ryan was behind her, like angled slightly behind her, And from my position at the door, slightly to the left of her, he was clothed, and he was looking directly at me as I opened the door.
And when you first caught eye contact with him, where exactly were you in relation to the bed, and where were they?
No, I was maybe one step into the room.
Okay. Now, when you observed him, what, if anything, did you observe about the situation prior to anything being said?
I observed, basically, as soon as I went in the room, it appeared that Christine tried to get up, but I guess I'm unsure if it's that Christine tried to get up or if Joe Ryan pulled her up. It's hard, I can't really tell, but Christine went from being on all fours, hands and knees, to more like being on her knees.
Now, had you said anything to them or to him specifically?
Almost immediately, I said police.
Okay, and what was your intention in doing that?
Alerting the room that I was there.
Okay, and at the time that you said police, was your gun in plain sight?
Yes, I was holding my gun forward.
And your badge, was that in plain sight?
My badge is on my belt, so that I don't know if he could see it, but it is. Okay. It is a gold badge that is attached to my belt.
And so, if you think of it as a clock around you, where would, at what point can you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury where your badge would be?
Like 11 o'clock. Okay. So just to kind of in front of my left pants pocket.
Okay. And were you wearing a jacket over that area?
I was wearing a jacket that day.
Do you know if it was covering it or not?
No, I don't know if it was covering it at that moment. I don't remember if my jacket was zipped or not, and it's February, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure if my jacket is zipped or not.
In terms of seeing the badge, you didn't pull it out and show it or anything?
I did not.
Okay. You just said police?
Yes.
And what happened from there?
Christine responded first. Christine said, Brendan, he has a knife.
Now, before she said that, did you see any weapons at that point?
I didn't see a weapon. I didn't see a weapon at my initial viewing of the scene in that first couple seconds.
And after Christine said that to you, were you able to identify it?
I observed that there was something silver in Joe Ryan's right hand, but it was still difficult to see, as part of it would be in his grip and part of it seemed to be inside of Christine's hair.
Okay, and I think you'd said previously, did Christine have long hair?
Christine had pretty long hair that goes down past the middle of her back. It's a curly, thick brown. She had a lot of hair.
Okay. Now, just so we're clear, when at the time that you said police, what was the position of Joe Ryan and what was the position of Christine?
Joe Ryan was also on the floor. I would say that he was in a kneeling position, on the floor, partially behind Christine, partially behind the bed.
Okay. And the bed, is the bed high?
The bed is, I would say the bed is very high for a lot of people. It has storage dressers underneath the bed, and there was a foundation under it, and then the mattress itself is a thick mattress too.
Okay. So from your vantage, have you changed your vantage point? I think you'd said one step into the room.
Yeah, I had only basically gone one, maybe two steps into the room, and I didn't go further at that point.
Now, when you said police, what, if anything, did Joe Ryan say to you?
Joe Ryan didn't say something until after I told him to drop the knife.
Okay. And what was his response?
He told me to drop my gun.
And at that point, was there, well, let me ask you this. You saw a knife there. What were you thinking in terms of Joe Ryan with a knife to Christine's neck?
I was extremely terrified. I don't know that I've ever been more panicked in my life.
And so what were you thinking that you needed to do?
I was hoping to de-escalate the situation. I did not want to shoot him.
Okay.
I wanted him to let her go.
And so after.
Are you buying it? Let us know what you think about his testimony on social media. We read your comments. Coming up, more testimony from this defendant in the au pair affair murder trial playing out in Virginia. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brandon Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The au pair affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Did you ever create any sort of a plan with Juliana?
No, there was no plan. At this point, our relationship is maybe 6 to 8 weeks old. I think that it's an absurd line of questioning for something that is not serious, that a plan was made to get rid of my wife. That is absolutely crazy.
Defendant Brendan Banfield denying that he conspired with his live-in nanny turned mistress to kill his wife in an elaborate double murder plot. Prosecutors accused the former IRS investigator of creating a profile in his wife's name on a fetish dating website in order to lure an unsuspecting man to their home who he would later frame for her murder. Let's get you back into court now, where Banfield is describing the moment he allegedly walked into the bedroom to see a man holding a knife to his wife's neck.
John, what did you say?
I repeated to drop the knife and to let her go.
And did he say anything to you?
He did. He He told me that she was hers, that she was hers, and that she gave herself to me. And Christine kind of yelled, moaned at this point also.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said she was hers?
She was his, sorry. She was his.
Can you say the whole statement?
He said that she was his, and that she gave herself to him, to me, is what she gave herself to me, is what he said.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I interrupted. What happened then?
Christine kind of yelled or moaned, or both, and it seems that she went to her left, my right, a little bit.
Okay. Now, when she yelled or moaned, what did that indicate to you?
I thought that she was being injured, being stabbed.
Did you see him stab her?
It appeared that he was putting forward movement towards, or it seemed that he was putting forward movement towards with the knife, but I couldn't see Christine's neck or face really at that point. Her hair was in the way.
Okay. So if you can, explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why it was you couldn't see Christine's face or her neck.
Christine's hair was, I would describe as kind of wild at this point. Not normally it's brushed and straight, or, well, not really. I mean, it's still curly, but, you know, it's more kept. It was kind of large and frizzy at this point, and I couldn't really see very well.
Okay. And so I interrupted you. So well, go ahead and tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you were following up with.
I'm sorry, I don't.
So you indicated in your previous answer that you couldn't see whether or not he had stabbed her in the neck or made contact with the neck.
Correct.
Okay. And that she had made some sort of a sound and pulled away.
Yes, so she kind of moved to her left and to my right, but my best guess is that he had a grip on maybe the back of her neck, maybe the back of her hair. I can't see his left hand at this point, and so she did not really go anywhere.
Did she appear to be injured greater than what you thought when you saw her?
It appeared that she had some amount of, I believe that she had some amount of blood in her hair at this point.
From where you could see it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me just ask you this. Other than your training, had you ever shot a person before?
I had never used my firearm outside of a range situation.
And just to clarify my question, it sounds like you had shot somebody in training. You just did training, correct?
I did not shoot anybody in training. I have not used my weapon in duty at any point, or the only time I had used my firearm was at a gun range or at training.
Okay. Was that a concern for you while you were in the moment?
There wasn't a lot of space between Joe and Christine. I was very fearful of hitting Christine.
And so what if anything, when the time came Well, were you considering using your firearm?
Yes.
At what point did that start?
I mean, very quickly in the situation, but there's only, his head isn't far from Christine's head. I guess his part of his body is partially behind Christine's body. Part of his body is behind the bed. It's a very tight situation.
Okay. And so you delayed from your first instinct?
Judge, objection is to leading.
What, if anything, did you do then?
I'll sustain the objection.
I mean, I know that I told him to let her go at least one more time, and then I know that I told him that he was going to be under arrest.
Okay.
Let's bring in our guest for this hour. Here to discuss, joining us from Sarasota, Florida, we have trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Nice to see you on this Thursday. Big day here, right? So we have this defendant, second day on the stand. He's still under direct. What do you make of his testimony so far?
Why? Why did he take the stand? I thought yesterday he made some headway with the forensic digital expert, but this just takes it all away. His story just is not making sense. I mean, why do we have an au pair that's watching a child that's now carrying a firearm? And there's so many things here that I have an issue with this story.
Yeah, and let's dive deeper into what doesn't make sense. Does his account of creeping around to the bedroom and then seeing different positions and then telling him to drop the knife a couple times. Does any of that make sense to you or this jury?
No, I mean, the question that popped out to me was, if she set up this whole thing and now her husband walked in on this, don't you think she would be startled about the fact that now he's in the room? I mean, why now? Because the whole setup was this fantasy rape situation, allegedly, and now it would make sense that he was bringing these items.
And wouldn't it make sense that she would scream at some point? He hasn't mentioned any screams, and he didn't appear too emotional when he said that it was the most horrifying moment of his entire life. That stood out to me.
Yeah, that was a little flat. There's no emotion here whatsoever. He walks in, he sees this, he has this, which also, he mentions that he has this conversation where she says, oh, he has a knife. I mean, this is the first thing that comes out, the exchange is, oh, he has a knife. There's no other exchange going on. It just screams to me that this is a setup on his part.
So what are you watching for?
What am I, to convince me otherwise? Some consistency, something that made sense out of this testimony? Because to me, none of it's making sense. He really should not have taken the stand.
Come on, let me know what you really think. No, just kidding. All right, we're going to hit the pause button right there. You're going to be sticking with us all hour long. Coming up, more testimony from this defendant in the au pair affair murder trial playing out there in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is Court TV Live.
State of Utah versus Kevin Stanley Ellis, case number 241100884. As to count one, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count one murder, as charged in the information, guilty.
Big moment there. Kevin Ellis found guilty late last night in the shooting death of his brother-in-law, Matthew Rastelli. Prosecutors had argued Ellis conspired with his mother and sister to shoot Rastelli and then staged the scene to make it look like self-defense. But after about 6 hours of deliberations, the jury found Ellis guilty of the murder, but not guilty of conspiracy. Ellis's mom, Tracy Grist, is set to go trial next in April 13th. His sister, Catherine Rastelli, pleaded guilty and testified during his trial. She's expected to testify during hers as well. We'll, of course, keep you updated on the case. Let's head back to Virginia now, where defendant Brendan Banfield is back on the stand testifying for day 2 of his defense. Prosecutors say Banfield killed his wife, Christine, and another man, Joseph Ryan, in a plan to run off with his mistress, the family's au pair. But the defendant refutes that claim, telling the jury yesterday that he played no part in the catfishing murder plot. You haven't missed a moment. We hit the pause button. Let's get you back into the courtroom.
I missed that. At some point, he asked for me to leave, and at a different point, he asked for himself to leave.
And what did you say to those requests?
At that point, that was when I told him that he was under arrest.
Okay. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what, if anything, took place that caused you to discharge your firearm?
It appeared that he did a very forceful stab towards Christine, and Christine kind of spun away from him. So she was facing towards me, and I guess she like rotated as she spun away from him and landed on her stomach on the ground. This kind of had Joe now like on his knees, kind of facing Christine, of which I saw him do a downward stabbing stroke, and that's when I fired at him.
And when you fired, were you able to determine whether or not you made contact?
I didn't know where I made contact, but I believed that I made contact as he moved.
Okay.
He moved backwards, He moved backwards a little bit away from Christine. At that point.
And what did you do?
I immediately hurried towards Christine, and I actually stepped over her, and I told her to stay down as I stepped over her. I did this so that I could look at Joe Ryan and see if he was still a threat.
And what, if anything, did you see when you went over there?
I saw the knife on the floor.
Okay. Was that the first time you saw the knife in its full?
That was the first time I could fully see the knife. The other times, it was in his grip and obscured by Christine's hair.
And the knife that you saw is the same knife that you've seen in the Commonwealth's photos?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, did you help Christine?
At that moment, I did not help Christine yet. I used my foot and dragged the knife towards me with my toe to move the knife away from Joe.
Okay, so if you can, so that there's an image in their minds, can you explain from stepping over Christine to doing what you just said with the knife?
I probably need to take another step or two to get closer to Joe. The knife was very close to Joe. It's like I reached my right foot forward. I still had my gun pointed at him. So I reached my right foot forward, and I guess stuck my toe out and dragged it back towards me so that it was not next to him.
Okay, and what would you say the distance was where the knife was when you first touched it with your foot? I'm sorry, the distance from Joe Ryan when you first touched it with your foot?
Not more than a foot, foot and a half.
Okay. And when you removed it from the area around him, how far was it from Joe Ryan?
Maybe 5 or 6 feet, but immediately next to me.
Okay. So what did you do then next?
I didn't notice that Joe was moving. And
well, let me ask you this. Did you ever touch Joe?
I never touched Joe at any point during this encounter.
Okay. And when you moved the knife, what did you then, what happened next?
I turned around and faced Christine, and I kneeled down next to her.
Okay. And what was her position at the time that you kneeled down next to her?
At that point, she was on her stomach. She was kind of writhing back and forth, kind of rolling back and forth. And I guess at some point, pretty quickly, she rolled over onto her back.
Was that with your assistance?
At that point, she was doing that on herself. I don't think that I helped her roll onto her back.
Okay. What, if anything, were you doing to assist her at that point?
So she was holding her neck. And she told me that she couldn't see. And I asked her to let me see, indicating that her hand was covering her neck. And she very shakily removed her hand from her neck, and I could see the wound on the right side of her neck.
Okay.
Hitting the pause button there, you're not going to miss a thing. Coming up, more testimony from that Herndon, Virginia courthouse where defendant Brendan Banfield is on the stand telling the jury his side of events at his double murder trial.
What are you reporting?
Fire.
The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
The defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home.
Their sprawling mansion set on fire.
Paul and Keith were not only brothers but business partners.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson. Let's head back to Virginia now, where Brendan Banfield is on the stand testifying in his own defense. He's accused of conspiring with his nanny to kill his wife in an elaborate murder plot to frame a man he allegedly found on a fetish dating website. You haven't missed a thing. We hit the pause button. Let's get you back into court for more testimony.
And what, if anything, did you do at that point?
She told me to put my hand there, and she had put her hand back on her neck, and then I put my left hand on top of her hand, but she pulled her hand from underneath mine and put her hand back on top of my hand and put pressure on my hand, I think indicating that she wanted more pressure on the wound.
And did you do that?
Yes, I had.
Okay.
I had my hands on hers, trying to apply pressure.
And she was helping you?
Yes.
And so at that point, had you asked Juliana to call 911?
At that point, I noticed that Juliana was in the room. And I told Juliana to both call 911, and I told her to watch him, meaning indicating to Joe.
So the position that you were in when you were attending to Christine, where was it in relation to Joe at the last time you saw him?
Joe was behind me. I wasn't facing Joe. I was kneeling down with Christine in front of me. I guess my body orientation would be towards the master bathroom.
Okay. And what if anything happened next?
Juliana she looked like she was stunned, but after I told her to call 911 and watch him, she seemed to dart forward and went into the master bathroom.
Okay. And did you ask her to do that?
No.
Do you know what she was doing?
I mean, I know what she was doing now, but I don't know. I don't think I was thinking about what she was doing at that second.
That's what I'm asking, is what was she did you know what she was doing at that time?
I don't think that's what I was thinking about at.
Okay.
I don't think I was thinking about what she was doing at that time.
Now, what happened next?
Christine told me that she was bleeding out, and that she was sorry and that she loved me.
And what did you tell her?
It was at this point that there was another shot. And I looked up and I saw that Juliana had my other firearm. And I was stunned that Juliana had shot.
Okay. Did you, where was she in relation to where you were?
She was in front of the master bathroom door. This is kind of a double door.
And so, how far do you think she was from you when you shot?
Not very far at all.
Shot?
Not very far at all. Maybe 4 or 5 feet.
Was there any indication as to why she shot prior to shooting?
I didn't hear her say anything prior to. I didn't hear her say anything prior to her shooting.
Now, at any point, do you recall Joe Ryan touching you?
So this was at roughly the same time as the shot. I don't exactly know, if I would assume maybe almost simultaneously. Joe Ryan struck me in my shoulder, like the back part of my shoulder blade.
And did you see him do that?
I did not see him do that.
How did you know it was him?
Well, he's the only person behind me. There's no one else. There's no one else behind me.
And after you felt that, was that when Juliana shot?
To me, those all seem to be within the same second. It's hard to say exactly.
Okay. Now, when you were So you were tending to Christine prior to Juliana shooting, correct?
Yes.
Were you able to maintain whatever it was you were doing for Christine?
I don't know exactly why, but my reaction to being hit and Juliana shooting was to stand up. And I stood up and turned around and looked at Joe.
Okay.
Joe was then further back, closer to the wall, and partially on the dog bed.
Now, did you make sure that he was not getting up again?
I looked at him. He did not appear to be moving at that point.
Okay. What did you then do?
I yelled for Juliana to call 911 again, and I turned back around and went back to Christine.
Now, do you know what Juliana did with the gun that she used to shoot Joe Ryan?
At some point, I know she put it on the bed.
Did you?
Still with us, watching with you at home, trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Okay, so what do you make of the way that he describes the suspect, the man, the intruder in his home, the guy that he found with a knife with his wife, the guy that allegedly stabbed his wife? He calls him Joe.
It's just too rehearsed to me. And they're just, the other thing is, you know, the wife is talking, which I don't even know if she'd be able to do that with stab wounds to her neck to this degree. She's identifying she's bleeding out. No mention of the daughter as she's bleeding out. If she was awake, it was how much she loved him. And then, you know, just that they asked, well, how did you know it was Joe that was standing behind you before the au pair shot him? And he says, well, nobody else was there. Well, apparently there was somebody else there, the au pair who shot him.
Yeah, you know, and that's at the exact point that Michelle Stuckey, the producer in my ear, told me. She said, there's no mention of the daughter, just about him. You know, it's just so bizarre.
Well, I mean, his testimony and what's come out has been, you know, how all these women liked him and, you know, everybody wanted him and he had the au pair. I mean, he definitely, it is about him for sure. But, you know, he has a hard time because he was having an affair, admittedly, with the au pair. The jury, that's not going to sit well to start with a lot of jurors. He needs to get this jury to like him, and I don't think he's doing that.
So what are you watching for as we approach the top of the hour here? What are you watching for with direct, at least? Because it doesn't seem like we're very far in his testimony, even though today is day 2 for him.
I mean, what I, as a jury, would look for is, you know, if I was trying to find reasonable doubt, is some consistency with what he's saying, something that just sits well from a common sense standpoint. Because as I'm listening to him, it just seems like his argument just doesn't make sense.
Alexis, thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right, coming up, more testimony from defendant Brendan Banfield in the au pair affair murder trial. You're watching Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson in today for Ted Rowlands. Thanks for being with us. We start in Virginia this hour where defendant Brendan Banfield is back on the stand for a second day testifying in his own defense. The former IRS criminal investigator says he had no idea that his wife Christine was allegedly talking to a man on a fetish dating website before her murder. But prosecutors say Banfield was the one behind that dating profile, which he used to lure another man to their home in order to have violent sex with his wife. From there, the Commonwealth says that he then staged the scene to make it look like that other man attacked his wife, forcing him to shoot in self-defense. Let's get you back to the courtroom now and more testimony from this defendant as he describes the moments immediately after he and his au pair shot Joseph Ryan.
Did you observe that?
I don't think I observed her putting it on the bed.
Okay. And the gun that Juliana shot Joe Ryan with wasn't the gun that you have, correct?
No, the gun that I shot Joe Ryan with was my duty weapon, a Glock 19M, and the gun that Juliana took out of the safe was a Glock 43X.
Now, the gun that you used to shoot Joe, was that put back in the holster?
I did not put my gun back in the holster. I put it on the ground next to me. Basically just right at my side, kind of where I was kneeling.
So where, in terms of position, when you were tending to Christine, what position were you facing?
I was facing Christine towards the master bathroom door, and yeah.
And so when you put your gun down in order to aid her, was it, to what direction did you put the gun down?
I put it to my right, so it was in between me and the bed.
And to the best of your recollection, do you know where it was in terms of in relation to the corner of the bed?
It's pretty close to the back left corner of the bed. There wasn't too much space between me and the bed at this point.
And can you just tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in terms of time that morning, after you put that gun down, what did you do?
Well, when I put the gun down, that's when I had originally started aid to Christine, and that was when I asked her to show me the wound, and then we had kind of both put our hands on the wound.
Okay. Now, did there come a time when you instructed Juliana to call 911?
I had instructed Juliana to call 911 at least twice.
Okay. And did there come a time where you realized that, when you were wondering what was going on with 911?
She seemed to be, after she shot, she seemed to be stunned and just standing there, not doing anything. And I yelled at her to call 911 again.
Okay. And do you know if she followed your advice?
At that point, she seemed to come out of her trance, and I know that she started working on her phone.
Now, why didn't you call 911?
I had a significant amount of blood on my hands, and I was trying to help Christine. And also, we're trained that if there's others around, if you can have them call 911 or assist you, that is something that you would instruct them to do.
So from inside the room, please describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that 911 how you came to be talking on the 911 call.
Juliana seemed to be pacing, kind of in front of the TV area of the bedroom, and kind of moving towards the master bedroom door. She called 911, but when she called, she really wasn't saying anything. She was kind of stumbling over her words.
And so what, if anything, did you do?
I heard that she was on the call with 911. And I could hear the 911 operator asking questions, and so I answered the questions, of my home location and I guess briefly what had happened.
And what did you say?
I believe I said that there was a man that had stabbed my wife and that I had shot him. And I identified myself as an officer, gave my address. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, were you still rendering aid to Christine?
Yes, we had spoke slightly more also during that time. She was coughing, and blood had come out of her mouth, and so I knew that that's possible for people to choke on blood, and so I told her I was going to roll her on her side, and she did, and so we did, and so I did that, and she seemed to know that that was also the right thing to do.
Okay. And so she was able to help you roll her over?
Yeah, so I rolled, so I guess it would be kind of slightly away from me, slightly more towards the master bathroom door and further away from the bed.
Now, in the time frame that we've just talked about, did you ever get a point where you had a better idea of the wounds that were on Christine's neck?
After Juliana shot, and I went back to Christine. Once again, I put my hand on her hand, but she slid her hand from underneath mine and put it on top of mine. And actually my finger went inside of her neck, and that made me realize how badly she was hurt.
Now, with regard to when the hands were removed off of the neck, was there any indication as to how badly she was hurt in terms of anything?
I'm sorry, could you say it again?
In terms of, once you took your hands off of her neck, did that give you any indication of the extent of the wounds?
Yeah, I could see I saw the length of the wound, and the fact that my, part of my finger actually went inside of hers before I quickly moved my hand out.
Were you able to, and so were you able to continue compression?
I did try, I would say that both of us continued to try compression. Probably also just before she rolled over, I realized that she was holding her hand on the other side of her neck too. I didn't notice that previously.
And so what side of the neck are you talking about now?
I was helping her with the right side of her neck, and she had her left hand on her left side of her neck.
Okay, so she was tending to herself on the left side of the neck?
Yeah, I didn't notice that originally.
Okay, did you assist her then at that point?
I did not put my other hand around her I did not put my other hand around her at that point. It was, I don't know, I guess we were focused, I was talking to her, and I guess I was a little bit more focused on that.
Okay. And in talking to her, did she assist you in any, I mean, in terms of how you could help her?
Basically, she had indicated that, she had told me that she, in her words and with her hands, that, you know, she wanted more pressure. After my finger had gone into her neck, I guess I tried to close my hand a little bit around the skin to try to, I don't know, I guess try to close the wound as much as possible, but it didn't seem to be doing anything.
Hitting the pause button right there so that we can get in a short break, but don't worry, you're not going to miss a single moment. More testimony from the defendant in the au pair affair murder trial playing out in Virginia. After the break, this is Court TV Live.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The au pair affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
View of this data, were you able to draw any opinions related to this case?
I was.
And what were those opinions?
That catfishing did not occur.
The case against Brendan Banfield winding down, and the big question, one of them for this jury, will be who was behind the FetLife account that would eventually become the center of a double murder case. The Commonwealth says Banfield and his au pair turned mistress created that account in his wife's name to lure and frame another man for her murder. But the defense says Christine was behind that account and claims several detectives also came to that same conclusion during their investigation. Let's get you back into court now, where the defendant is describing the moments he claims he tried to save his wife's life.
In terms of the blood, when you took your hand off of her wound, what did you see?
In the beginning, you could see that the blood was like, I guess, partially shooting out, and it was going through her fingers. But later on, that wasn't what was happening any longer.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you observe, and what did you do?
I mean, this was back to putting pressure and covering the wound. And
now, did there come a time when the first responders arrived?
Yes, after some time, the first responders arrived. I know that Juliana left the room at some point, and I know that I heard her go down the stairs. I think that 911 had instructed her to open the door. At a different point on the 911 call, the 911 operator advised to get towels. And Juliana, this was before opening the door. Juliana went into the master bathroom and came back with towels also.
Now, had you been using anything when the 911 operator suggested towels, clean towels, things like that?
So I guess originally I guess I stopped doing pressure when the 911 operator recommended to use towels. And at that point, I grabbed the comforter that was kind of all around me. And I used the comforter, part of the comforter on her neck for a little bit.
Okay. And did there come a time where you moved to something different, or what
When Juliana gave me the towels, I kind of tossed the comforter behind me and used a towel.
Okay. Now, what, if anything, did you do after that?
I know that there was a point that I rechecked Christine's pulse. So I had to remove the towel, and I saw that, it wasn't really as covered in blood anymore, and the pulse was significantly weaker. And I checked her pulse with my hand. Her pulse, she still had a pulse, but it felt slow and weak compared to when I had my hand previously.
Now, if you can, and do you have any idea, or can you give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury any indication as to, from the time you shot Joe Ryan to the time the first responders arrived, how long that was?
It's hard. It's very difficult to say. It felt like an extremely long time. I don't know. You're not really thinking about how long it really takes, but the wait on the 911 call felt like it was forever.
After you testified, you stood up after Juliana shot Joe Ryan?
Yeah.
Was there any time between the moment you went back to Christine and the time the first responders arrived that you weren't next to Christine?
After I stood up, I spent the rest of my time kneeling next to Christine, and I did not get up from next to Christine until first responders arrived and instructed me that they were going to take over.
Okay. Well, let's go to that point. What was the first thing that you realized that the police were there, or fire, or whomever?
I know that I heard Juliana yelling to come up here. And I heard many footsteps and people arriving.
And from your position of rendering aid, how did you move from that position?
So I was facing Christine and facing towards the master bathroom, and I was instructed to go into the master bathroom.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think I was standing relatively near for a few seconds before they instructed me to go into the master bathroom.
And when you relinquished first aid duties to the first responders, was Christine still breathing?
Yes, Christine was still breathing.
And her pulse was still positive?
Yes, she was still alive, very much.
Okay. Now, when you were taken away by the first
Mr. Carroll, is this
responders.
a good time to have the morning break?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and take our 15-minute morning break. Please do not discuss the case with anybody and don't do any outside research. Thank you.
All right, while they take that break, let's bring in my guest for this hour. Here to discuss criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jack Rice. You also worked with the CIA. So what are your spidey senses telling you? What are you noticing in this guy's testimony?
Well, it's fascinating for a lot of different reasons, Matt, because what we're always looking at is the risk that happens when you have a defendant take the stand itself. And yet what you're also seeing is the payoff. Because one of the things that is the truth, whether the rules say it or not, is that juries want to see somebody speak. If you get charged with a crime, I've seen this over and over again where they'll say the state has the burden or the Commonwealth has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that happened and that the defendant has no burden. And yet the jury still wants to see him. When you make a heinous allegation against somebody like this, what you're seeing is somebody taking the stand and he seems appropriately emotional. I think there's a lot of jurors who are going to see this and say, this seems consistent with a grieving husband to some degree. And what the defense has done so successfully is push exactly on what you were alluding to earlier, which is that website and actually who was connecting to it. Was it him and the au pair, or was it his wife? And I think that's extraordinarily important for the defense to continue to hit on. And I think they're actually gaining traction at this point.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's the whole case. That's what it comes down to, right? Who created that account? But that's great legal analysis, my friend. But I want to know what you think. You worked at the CIA. What do you think of this guy? Do you believe him?
We looked at the credibility of the au pair. And when she took the stand, I thought she came across as extraordinarily credible. What I really think is I want to see the cross. Direct is all well and good. I've seen this happen in my own cases where direct goes just great because I have the ability to control and prepare and to lay this out in the way that I want to. What I want to see and when I can really assess it is when the cross comes. Because from my perspective, if I'm the prosecutor in this case, watch me, dare I use the phrase, cut him up. Because I will if I have him on the stand. I'm going to take him down a path and I'm going to literally take him apart if I have the ability to do so.
Does anything stick out in what you would ask him first or what you would eventually ask him, to your point?
I think the first part about this is this notion of the grieving husband thing. Yeah, that's all well and good except for the au pair, except for the reality of your circumstances and everything that you're doing. And I think what we do is we start working our way through that. And that really grabs me first. I have motive in a case like this, and I'm going to use it. Remember, the elements of a charge almost never, ever include motive. But I can tell you, after doing this for so long, that what a jury wants, they want to be able to explain this. They're watching this saying, this just doesn't make sense. For somebody who's acting in this manner, why is it that you would have stayed in the way that you did with the au pair in the way that you did it? If you're talking about getting ready to leave, is this consistent with that? That doesn't quite make sense to me either. And so we're watching those things and you're looking at motive and juries simply love it. They just do.
Yeah, and for our courties out there, I'm reading the comments, and there's a lot of questions out there that are not being answered right now in this direct examination. All right, Jack Rice, you're going to stick with us all hour long. Coming up, more testimony. Brendan Banfield describes the moments after police arrive on the scene. And you don't want to miss this testimony. We'll be right back. Back to Virginia now, where we have been watching defendant Brendan Banfield testify in his own defense. He's accused of killing his wife Christine and another man, Joseph Ryan. Prosecutors say that it was all part of a deadly plan with his nanny turned lover. She has already pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Let's get you back into that courtroom now for more testimony from this defendant.
Sir, we left off at the point when you were being told to let the first responders take care of Christine. Do you recall who it was that advised you to go into the bathroom?
I did not know the names of anybody at that point.
Okay. When you went into the bathroom, what, if anything, did you do while they were tending to Christine?
I was instructed to sit on the edge of the tub.
Okay. And at that point, what condition were you in?
I was panicked, shocked, worried, scared. I felt like I was having a very hard time breathing, and my leg was bothering me, seemed to be spasming.
Okay, we saw from the body cam video, excuse me, we saw from the body cam video you received, I guess, a checkup in the ambulance?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of the officers took me to an ambulance.
And what was that? What was the basis for them to get you checked out? Do you know?
I know at one point when I was in the bathroom, I went to the ground.
Okay.
And I wasn't walking properly. So they seemed to want to get me checked out.
When you arrived back home from the McDonald's, were you having any difficulties physically?
No.
During the period of time of what you described on February 24th within the bedroom, were you struck in any way that would have affected your lower extremities?
I don't remember being hit in my leg at all. I only remember being hit in the back of my shoulder.
Okay. And when you, I think it's partially showing on the body cam, but when you went down, describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happened.
I was crying. I was having, I guess I would say that I was hyperventilating. I stabilized myself with my hands on the floor. And I was scared for Christine.
Okay. And at some point you, as we see in the evidence that's been presented, you go to the ambulance and you go to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about another topic that came up during the trial. What, if anything, did you know about the purchase of windows at your house?
Windows were, Christine and I started looking for windows back in 2021. We received quotes from 10, 12, 15 different vendors. The shopping process was long. Over the course of the quotes and shopping process, we've refined that we wanted triple pane windows because the front of my house has quite a bit of southern exposure. A lot of sun comes in there and the foyer would get very warm. Also, some of the windows in my house were stuck closed where we couldn't open them. Christine complained about that None of our windows had screens. And one of the windows by the back door was off center enough that there was actually a slight gap to the outside. And the smallest window in the basement, for some reason, was a single pane window and would allow cold to come in. So that was a lot of the reasons why we shopped for windows.
And you indicated you went through numerous vendors?
Yes.
And when, if you know, did you agree upon vinyl light windows?
I believe we agreed on, I believe we had a second quote from Vinylite in the summer, the early summer of 2022, which is before any relationship with Juliana. And we received an updated quote with the triple pane windows. I believe it was in July of 2022, which is also before any relationship with Juliana. And we've placed the final order in August and I believe made the first payment before any relationship was with any relationship with Juliana, meaning that.
Hitting the pause button right there. You're not going to miss a thing. Coming up, more testimony from that Virginia courthouse where the defendant is on the stand. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was there. I'm gonna kill her. I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Fair.
It appeared that he did a very forceful stab towards Christine, and Christine kind of spun away from him. So this kind of had Joe now like on his knees, kind of facing Christine, of which I saw him do a downward stabbing stroke, and that's when I fired at him.
Defendant Brendan Banfield back on the stand for a second day, testifying in his own defense. Prosecutors allege that he conspired with the family's au pair, whom he was having an affair with, to murder his wife, Christine, and another man by the name of Joseph Ryan. The nanny, Juliana, pleaded guilty to manslaughter in this case and told the jury that her lover planned out the murders in detail. Let's get you back into court now for more of his side of the story.
The windows were fully decided prior to any relationship with Juliana.
Now, did you ever go outside and scream in some sort of a test?
No, it's ridiculous. I did at one point speculate to Juliana that I wondered if our neighbors didn't hear the gunshots because of the windows. That's the only thing that I ever remember saying to Juliana, and that was after February 24th, after some of my neighbors had spoke to me and said that they didn't hear anything.
Now, the window job that you had Vinylite do was a full replacement of all the windows.
Yes, it was replacement of every window.
Okay. And was there anything about the windows in the bedroom that was greater in terms of soundproofing or greater in terms of efficiency than the other windows around the house?
No, the entire house was chosen to do triple pane windows. There was a couple windows that were slightly different. One of them was the pane window in the master bathroom, which was obscured glass so that people can't see into the master bathroom. And we changed the style of window of the basement smallest window to being double pane and triple pane in a sliding style. I think that was the main changes, besides upgrading to triple pane and the different repairs and things that we wanted in terms of features.
Now, moving on to the personal weapon that you have.
Okay.
Was that the one that Juliana used on the 24th?
Yes, my personal firearm was a Glock 43X.
And where do you normally keep that?
I keep it in my firearm safe, which is inside of my master bedroom closet.
Okay. And do you know, was that firearm in the safe and locked on the 24th of February?
Yes, the firearm was in the safe and locked on the 24th of February.
And did Juliana have access to the code?
Juliana knew the code because the code was the same as my door code to the house. And at different points, she was in my master bedroom closet and observed me putting away my firearms.
And so when you testified that she went into the closet and you thought it was for towels?
So when she went to the bathroom, I guess first I can't see the master bedroom closet from where I was in the bedroom. When I told her to watch him and call 911, I didn't know what exactly she was doing at that moment, and I couldn't see that she went to the safe.
And at what point did you realize that she had gone to the safe?
Only after she shot.
And at some point, were you able to confirm that your personal weapon was being used?
Well, yes, I saw that she had my weapon.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the day before, November 23rd.
February 23rd?
I'm sorry, February 23rd. I apologize. Were you aware of any vacation plans for you and the members of your family?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you know about the vacation plans?
Christina and I already had a cruise that was planned for, I don't know, maybe May or June of 2023. That was planned earlier with a large part of our family was going to be attending to that. But Christine and I were planning another trip, which was going to possibly be to Punta Cana, which is where we had our honeymoon originally, and so we had discussed that, and she was telling me about some of the resorts that she had been looking at.
Okay, and was Royalton Resorts one of those?
That, I believe, was the one that she liked the best, and she sent me a message wanting me to look at it and basically to see if I agreed, and if we would probably book it relatively soon if we thought that would work out, and we'd have to figure out, days off and things like that.
Do you remember
Still with us, criminal defense attorney and friend of the program, Jack Rice. Nice to see you, Jack. All right, so what sticks out from this latest bit of testimony for you?
No, it's getting fascinating, isn't it? Because this does start to feel a little like a horse race. And remember, criminal cases are not horse races, but this one is. And the reason is you have police officers sort of on two sides of it. Those who are out there talking about this website saying, we don't think that it was him. We thought it was her. You had other police officers saying, nope, this is a catfishing question. There's no question about it. That makes it the horse race. Then you get the au pair on the one side. Now you have him on the other. And they're sort of running neck and neck. And you're watching to see what that happens, which actually becomes a very difficult space for a jury of 12, because this jury is sitting here trying to come up with the right answer. And yet the burden is on the Commonwealth to be able to establish this case. But they have the conflicts that they're dealing with, and they're going to have to address those, and they're going to have to come back at him with as much clarity and specificity as possible. Remember, when you're cross-examining somebody, the purpose is to use very short, declarative statements and take the evidence that they have, and they push this down his throat and forcing out yes answers. And that's really how they have to do it, and they better do it right, because he could slip out of that if they're not careful and do their jobs, frankly, better than the police did.
Well, these prosecutors, they're sharp, and they don't waste a lot of time with other witnesses in the case so far with lengthy cross-examination. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. But what do you make of this guy's answers? He doesn't just answer the question, right? He also goes into additional details that he wasn't asked in the first place.
No, well, you know what? I mean, remember, when we're talking about doing a direct examination, this is actually very purposeful on his part, and frankly, probably even his defense attorney's part, because while you're asking an open-ended question, what this is about is to give him the control of the narrative, to say, let's talk about what matters, let's talk about what's important. And sometimes what you could see from the prosecutors is an objection and calling it non-responsive. This is beyond the scope of the questions themselves, but they haven't done that yet. And so what he continues to do is to stretch, and he continues to provide more and more detail. And I think the purpose is to say, I'm being transparent, I'm trying to be as honest as I can. This is what he's doing for the jury. And hopefully they will buy into that from his perspective. Of course, we're not done. I keep coming back to this issue of the cross. That is really where the rubber's going to hit the road. That's when it matters, when you actually are testifying before a jury, especially as a defendant.
And we have to end it there. Thank you, Jack Rice. Coming up, Brendan Banfield continues his testimony as he talks about the murders and what he witnessed. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson, in today for Ted Rollins. Thanks for being with us. We are in Virginia this afternoon for the au pair affair murder trial for Brendan Banfield. Banfield is accused of conspiring with his mistress, Juliana Perez Magalhaes, to create an elaborate double murder scheme in order to frame a stranger for the murder of his wife. Prosecutors say the defendant lured Joseph Ryan to his home on the pretext of having violent sex with his wife, Christine. But when Ryan arrived at the scene, prosecutors say Banfield and his nanny staged it to make it look like Ryan was killed and his wife was shot, that he shot and killed Ryan in self-defense. Now Banfield is back on the stand for a second day, claiming that he had nothing to do with this murder plot. Let's get you back to court.
Do you remember where you were when you received that message?
Actually, I think I was in the living room with her. I think she just sent it to me as like, this is what we're saving so that we could, continue to review it later.
Okay, to show her.
Yes.
Or to show you, I guess.
Yes.
And how did you receive that message?
Generally, when we message, we don't use standard text messaging. usual messenger of choice was Facebook Messenger, and that's how I received that.
Okay. And you were in the same room with her?
I believe I was in the same room with her. We were in and out of the same room together frequently that day. That day was my birthday.
Specifically relating to that request or the discussion about the travel arrangements, did you ever take control of her laptop?
No, she was sitting on the couch using her laptop, and we were discussing it while I was playing with Lego with Valerie.
And did you ever use her phone regarding that discussion?
No, I never used her phone.
Did she ever leave to go anywhere during that discussion regarding resorts?
Not that I remember. At some point, I took Valerie to bed, and bedtime at that time usually involved a story or two, brushing teeth, getting changed, so that took 20, 30 minutes, and then I returned to Christine after I was done with bed for Valerie.
When you returned to Christine, did she have her devices still?
Yes.
Now, this was your birthday, so what was going on at the house that day?
One of my friends, Nishant, came over. He brought me a box of large cookies from, I believe it was Midnight Treats, and but really we didn't do anything for my birthday because Valerie had swim lessons that day, so I had taken Valerie to swim lessons. Christine had told me she had to work late. I don't think she got back until after 8. Christine and I had celebrated my birthday, I guess the day before. On the 22nd, we went to Korean barbecue, me, Christine, and Valerie.
Okay. And on the 23rd, which was your birthday, where was Juliana?
I don't know where Juliana was when we were talking about the vacations. I do know that she came with me to the gym. She actually worked out with Nishant at the gym, and then Nishant came back to our house later. I was with Valerie at the pool.
Okay. And when the discussions regarding resorts and all that sort of stuff was going on, was Juliana around for that?
I don't know where she was, but she was not in the living room, kitchen, main floor area.
Was Christine's laptop there with you guys?
Yes.
Was her phone with you guys?
I don't seem to remember much about her phone that day because my recollection is her using the laptop, and that's where she was doing the research that we were talking about.
Now, did there come a time when you recorded Lily and the sounds that Lily made and makes?
Yes. I believe it was in the summer of 24.
Okay. And in doing that recording, why were you making a recording of Lily's sounds?
Ryan Campbell which is Juliana's attorney, had come to my house because he wanted to view the layout of the house and see how far it took to get to places, and where my gun safe was and things like that. And when he was there, I had Lily outside because I didn't want her to bother him. And he heard sounds of Lily whining and complaining to come in because she was separated from everyone on the inside. And I believe it reminded him of the noise.
Sustained as to.
I don't think you can say what he thought.
Okay.
What, if anything, did he ask you to do?
Objection, hearsay.
Based upon your conversation with him, what, if anything, did you do?
I recorded the sounds that Lily made.
Okay. And have you listened to the file of Lily 3?
Yes.
And does that accurately represent the sounds that Lily made?
Yes, I sent several different recordings I made several different recordings for her, yes.
Okay, are you aware of the one Lily 3?
Yes.
And you've heard it and you've listened to it?
Yes.
And that reflects the sounds that Lily makes?
Yes, it does.
Here, I move that in as defense exhibit number 377.
Any objection?
No objection.
377 is a different, it was annotated as a different exhibit. Do you want to make it 378?
Yes, sorry, Judge. I thought we'd stopped at 376, so that's why.
You tried to get 377 in, but we didn't, so
Yeah,
378?
378, thank
Okay,
you.
378 in evidence.
And Your Honor, may I just chat with counsel for 1 second?
No, you don't have to start in.
Your Honor, the file that I was about to move in is already in evidence in the Commonwealth's case, the 911 call.
Okay, that's the exhibit 1 or exhibit 2 or 3? We have 3 911.
I believe it's exhibit 1.
Okay. All right.
Court's indulgence for 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Sir, have you ever used or looked at FetLife prior to the discovery that's come out in this case?
No, I had never used or looked at or heard of FetLife previously.
Were you aware?
All right, we're going to take a break right now. Don't worry, we're hitting the pause button. You're not going to miss a thing. Coming up, the rest of this direct examination of this defendant right there. Everything's on the line for Brendan Banfield. Then, later this hour, the cross-examination. You're watching Court TV.
Affair with the family's au pair lead to double murder.
He was there, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight, on closing arguments, Brendan Banfield returns to the stand, but is the jury buying his side of the story? We'll unpack this defendant's testimony as our experts weigh in.
Closing arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on CourtTV.com.
Christine told me that she was bleeding out and that she was sorry and that she loved me.
And what did you tell her?
It was at this point that there was another shot. And I looked up and I saw that Juliana had my other firearm. And I was stunned that Juliana had shot.
Brendan Banfield on the stand in his double murder trial, testifying about his wife's, well, at least what he says, what her dying words were. Banfield claims that he walked in on a stranger stabbing her in their home, forcing him to shoot and kill the man in self-defense. Christine Banfield also died, and the Commonwealth says that it was all part of an elaborate scheme orchestrated by Banfield and the family nanny. Let's get you back into court now for the rest of the defendant's direct examination.
Were you aware of Christine using FetLife at all?
No, I didn't have any knowledge of Christine using FetLife.
Did you have any knowledge of whether she had used Craigslist ever?
I think that she did back in New York to advertise that we had a yard sale.
Okay. And that would be the extent of the use of Craigslist?
That's the only time that I can remember.
How about something called Backpage? Did you ever know her to have used those kind of things?
No.
Was there any sort of, well, let me ask you this. How is it that you and Christine would primarily communicate?
Primarily, we would communicate on the phone. We would talk almost, when Christine would leave from work, she would almost always call me. Obviously in person when we're together. And if it's messages, such as when we're both at work, we usually use Facebook Messenger.
Now, in terms of what you've observed with FetLife, in your own relationship, were any of those sorts of things done in the bedroom?
There was a point a number of years ago that Christine had indicated that she was interested in bondage type situations.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Without getting into what she had said, were there times when...
Objection, leading.
Sustained is leading.
What, if any, times were there conflict in terms of sexual...
Objection, leading.
Sustained is leading.
In terms of your sexual relationship with Christine, what, if any, differences did you have?
I was not interested in ever harming her. I was never interested in sexual violence. I would say that we also had a discrepancy of how often we would like to have sex, where I would like to have sex more frequently than we did.
But did those differences, what, if any, effect did those differences have on your relationship with Christine?
I would say that those differences caused some of the reasons why we had affairs at various points in our relationship.
Did you love your wife?
Yes.
Do you love your daughter?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any sort of plan for what February 24th became?
No, it was a situation I was never expecting, never expected to be in, would never want anyone to be in.
In terms of looking back on February 24th, what, if any, things do you think you would do differently?
Objection, relevance.
I'll sustain the objection.
What, if any, things would you do differently in the room confronting Joe Ryan?
Objection, relevance.
I'll sustain as to relevance.
When you shot Joe Ryan, were you aware of where you had hit him immediately?
No.
When was it that you found out that you'd hit him in the head?
Actually, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where I hit him until we had discovery.
And why did you shoot Joe Ryan on February 24th?
He was attacking Christine. I mean, he was stabbing her. I mean, I wish I shot him earlier.
Karen, I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
I wish I shot him earlier. And then it's done. It's done. Now it's going to be in the hands of the prosecutors. But first, let's bring in our guest to discuss this hour. Live in studio, it's a treat for us, trial attorney Marlo Greer. Thanks for being with us. You're sitting here watching the end of this direct examination. What are your thoughts?
As I'm objecting and doing questions under my breath. In my breath, I'm like, okay, wait, you want to get this in, obviously. He wanted, the attorney clearly wanted, I wish I shot him earlier. I'm not sure how that...
Was it the attorney that wanted that, or was it the defendant?
I think it was the attorney that wanted it. That's why he kept asking those questions of, okay, what would you have done differently? And there was those objections. And so basically, instead of rephrasing the question such that it was going to come in, his client got it in. And so they had very clearly worked on that, right? But I still don't think it came across quite well. I wish I shot him earlier. It's, maybe I wish I would have intervened earlier so that I could have saved her life. I think he would have come across more credible had he been able to put that in there.
To me, I'm not really seeing emotion from a man that stumbled upon a bad situation and tried to save the life of his wife, and I mean, like, there was no emotion. It was just kind of flatlined.
Yeah, and I think that's, I was trying to figure out, like, where would I be if I was sitting on that stand? And I think that, there would be tears that were coming.
Well, first off, you wouldn't be.
Well, shh, don't tell my husband that.
Oh, no.
Isn't that the best thing that our families do for us, right? They go to sleep at night with us next to them, knowing that they're going to wake up in the morning. Like, that's pretty big, a huge vote of confidence, right?
Yes.